Good evening, my dear friends. Tonight I want to free you from a trap so quiet, so subtle, and so universally laid at the feet of every soul who has ever set the law in motion, that I am almost certain you yourself have walked into it sometime this very week. Perhaps even today, perhaps even an hour ago. It is the trap of looking for signs. Lean closer, my friends. There is much to undo here, and the undoing of it will, I believe, hasten the very thing you have been seeking. There are two souls in this great city tonight who have each 3 weeks ago set in motion the same kind of wish. We need not say what the wish is. Let us imagine it is something dear to them both, something they have longed for quietly for a very long time, and which they have at last begun to assume as already theirs. Each of them goes to bed each night in the warmth of the wish fulfilled. Each of them feels, in their better moments, the quiet certainty that what they have assumed must come to pass. But during the day, my friends, during the long hours of the day, these two souls do something altogether different. The first soul wakes in the morning and reaches at once for the telephone to see whether any message has arrived. None has. He frowns slightly and sets the telephone down. He goes to the window and looks at the sky to see what kind of day it is, half wondering whether anything in the cast of the morning will hint at what is coming. He walks to the corner shop. He glances at every license plate of every parked car along the way, looking for the numbers that have come to mean something to him. He counts them. He notes that he has seen one of them twice this morning and feels a small lift in his chest. He arrives at the shop. He buys his bread. He glances at the clock above the counter. It is 11 minutes past 10. 11 minutes past. He smiles to himself. He has been told 11 is a sign. He returns home. He glances at the telephone again. Nothing. He sits down. He rises. He glances at the telephone a third time. Nothing. By the end of the day, my friends, this man has cast perhaps 300 glances into the world looking for evidence of what he has already assumed. And by the end of the day, the manifestation is no nearer than it was this morning. Indeed, in some hidden chamber of his soul, it has receded. The second soul wakes in the morning and does not reach for the telephone. She rises. She makes her coffee. She listens to the small sounds of the house waking around her. She walks to the corner shop. She does not look at the license plates. She does not count them. She arrives at the shop. She buys her bread. She does not glance at the clock. She returns home. She opens the book she is reading. She passes the day in the small ordinary occupations of a life that is, today, quietly enough. She does not check the telephone once. She is not pretending it does not exist. She is simply, and here is the secret, my friends, no longer in the state of needing to check. She has, without quite realizing it, already become the woman who has what she assumed. And tomorrow, my friends, or perhaps the day after, the telephone will ring, and she will answer it almost without surprise. Of these two souls, which do you think will receive their manifestation? It is the second. It is always the second. And the difference between them, my friends, is not technique. It is not faith. It is not discipline. It is the 300 glances cast or not cast into the world over the course of a single day. Now why? Why should the simple act of glancing at a license plate or checking a telephone delay so deeply what we have assumed? It seems an innocent thing. It seems even in some sense an act of faith, for surely the man who looks for signs is the man who believes the signs will come. But this is precisely the great misunderstanding I want to dispel for you tonight. The man who looks for signs is not the man who believes. He is the man who requires proof. And requiring proof, my friends, is the very signature of doubt. Mark this carefully. The law is a mirror. It reflects, with absolute precision, the inner state of the one who stands before it. It does not reflect the words you speak to yourself. It does not reflect the visualizations you perform before sleep. It reflects the dominant feeling you carry through the long hours of your day. And every time you glance at the world looking for a sign, you are, in that very glance, confessing the dominant feeling underneath. You are saying in the silent grammar of the soul, I do not yet know whether this is mine. Show me, show me, show me. And the law, which can do nothing but mirrors that very state. I do not yet know whether this is mine. I do not yet know whether this is mine. Day after day, glance after glance. Let me tell you of a young man I knew in 1946. James was his name, perhaps 30 years old, a clerk in a small firm in New York, who had come to one of my Sunday lectures, and who, some months later, came back to find me. He told me that he had been assuming, for nearly 4 months, the receipt of a particular sum of money, a sum he needed for a venture he had long imagined for himself. He had felt the wish fulfilled. He had heard the imaginal conversation. He had done, he assured me, every technique I had ever spoken of, and the money had not come. He was by this point somewhere between desperation and quiet anger. I asked him a single question. I said, "James, how many times today have you looked for a sign that the money was on its way?" He looked at me. He laughed almost ruefully. He said, "Mr. Goddard, I have not stopped looking. I look at every envelope in the Morning Post. I look at the clock when I wake, 3:33, 4:44, 11:11. I look at the receipts at the grocery to see whether the totals have a meaning. I look at the cars in the street. I look at the birds when they cross the sky. I cannot remember the last hour in which I did not look." I said to him, "James, the money is not coming because you have built, in these 4 months, a daily life entirely structured around its absence. Every glance at every clock is a small act of waiting. Every reading of every license plate is a small act of not yet. You are spending your day in the state of one who has not received. The law is reflecting that state. It can do nothing else. It does not matter what you do for 15 minutes before sleep. The other 23 hours and 45 minutes are casting a vote, and they are voting not yet." James grew very still. He said, "But Mr. Goddard, what am I to do? Am I to ignore the signs?" I said, "There are no signs to ignore, James. There are only your own glances, which the world obediently fills with whatever they happen to land upon. Stop the glances. Live tomorrow as a man who has already received the money would live tomorrow. He does not check his envelopes anxiously. He does not read meaning into the clock. He pours his coffee. He goes to his work. He whistles perhaps. He thinks about other things. Be that man. And let the law do its quiet work without your daily inspection." James went home. I did not see him again for nearly 7 weeks. When at last he returned, he was carrying himself differently. He told me that for the first 10 days he had nearly gone mad with the discipline of not checking, that the urge to look at the clock when he woke had been almost physical, and that he had had to put the morning newspaper away to keep from scanning the headlines for hidden meanings. But by the 3rd week, the urge had begun to soften. By the 4th week, he had passed entire afternoons without thinking of the wish at all. And on the morning of the 41st day, my friends, an unexpected piece of business, a debt long thought uncollectible, had been settled in his favor by a sum that exceeded what he had originally imagined. He had not been looking when the news arrived. He had been writing a letter to a friend about something else entirely. Now mark this carefully, for it is the very heart of what I am sharing with you tonight. Every glance you cast at the world looking for evidence of your manifestation is a tax upon the manifestation itself. The world is not your reluctant employer who needs to be checked on hourly. The world is your obedient mirror. And what it mirrors is not the wish you speak to yourself before sleep, but the posture you hold while waiting. If you wait in the posture of one who scans, who reads, who searches, who counts, who refreshes, the world will give you, with absolute precision, more days of scanning, reading, searching, counting, and refreshing. The law cannot do otherwise. It is exact. I want to give you 3 principles about this matter. 3 things you must understand if you are to step out of this trap and begin to receive what you have already assumed. The first is this: the world does not contain signs in the sense that the world commonly imagines. There are no objective omens scattered across the pavement for you to find. The clock that strikes 11:11 was going to strike 11:11 whether you looked at it or not. The license plate that catches your eye was going to be on that car whether you noticed it or not. What gives these events the appearance of being signs, my friends, is your own attention. You are casting the meaning. You are doing the work of authorship and then handing it to the world as though the world had given it to you. This is not in itself a foolish act, for the imagination is the source of all meaning, and you do well to know that you are an author of meaning. But to use this faculty as a substitute for trust is to spend the very imagination that should be impressing your wish upon the deeper mind in the lesser work of decoding the street. You are spending gold to count copper. Stop. The gold is wanted elsewhere. The second is this. The very searching for signs slows the manifestation by a precise mechanism. It keeps you in the state of waiting for proof. That is itself a state. It is one of the most unprofitable states the human soul can occupy, because it is a state from which the senses are king. The searcher has handed his authority back to his senses. He has said in effect, "Show me, and I will believe." But the law works in exactly the reverse direction. The law works by believing first and seeing afterward. The man who requires the world to show him before he believes is asking the law to operate backward. It cannot. The man who believes and lives as one who has, even before any visibly confirmation, is the man for whom the visibly confirmation eventually arrives. He shall have whatsoever he saith. The old book teaches, but it is the saying within that opens the door, not the seeing without. Let the seeing follow. It always follows. It cannot do otherwise. The third is this, and this, my friends, is what I most wish you to take with you tonight. There is one true signature that your manifestation is on its way, and it is not a sign you find in the world. It is a state you find in yourself. It is the moment in which the longing for the wish quietly falls away. Not because you have given up, not because you no longer care, but because somehow you have crossed an inner threshold and you are no longer in the state of wanting. You are, ever so quietly, in the state of having. The wish has not yet appeared in form, but you have already moved out of the room of the one who waits for it. You wake in the morning and you do not check. You walk to the shop and you do not count. You pass the day and you do not refresh. Not by force, not by discipline, simply because the urgency has dissolved. This, my friends, is the only signature you should ever watch for. And it is the signature you cannot fake. You cannot pretend the longing has dissolved if it has not. The law sees the pretense for what it is. But if you do the proper inner work, if you live as one who has, if you go to sleep in the warmth of the wish fulfilled, if you refuse to scatter your imagination on the work of decoding the street, then in time, often more swiftly than you would believe, the longing itself will quietly drop. And on the morning you notice that you no longer feel the need to check the telephone, or to scan the parking lot, or to read the headlines for meaning. You may know with absolute confidence that the manifestation is at hand. It is in fact almost certainly within a fortnight of its appearance. The rest is the law's affair. Let me tell you now of a woman I knew in 1955. Eleanor was her name. A widow of perhaps 50 years, in San Francisco, who had come to me about a particular matter concerning her daughter. Her daughter had moved to a distant city some years earlier, and the relations between them had grown difficult. Eleanor had been assuming, for nearly 6 months, the renewal of a warm and easy relationship between them. She had been doing every technique I'd spoken of, and she was the first to admit it, checking her telephone perhaps 20 times a day, scanning the Morning Post for a letter, listening for the daughter's name in any conversation, in any room. I gave Eleanor the same counsel I had given James. I said, "Eleanor, stop checking. Not because checking is morally wrong, but because every check is a small confession that the wish is not yet so. Spend the next 6 weeks living as the mother of a daughter with whom relations are warm and easy. Such a mother does not check her telephone every hour. She telephones occasionally if she pleases. She writes occasionally if she pleases, and otherwise she simply lives in the quiet, ordinary happiness of one to whom her daughter is a settled gladness rather than a daily ache. Eleanor went home. She found, as James had found, that the discipline was difficult at first, almost a kind of mourning for the rituals of waiting. But by the fourth week, she could pass an entire afternoon without checking the telephone. By the sixth week, she had stopped looking for her daughter's name in any conversation. She told me, when at last she came back, that one Tuesday evening she had been arranging flowers on her kitchen table for herself, for the simple pleasure of the flowers, and she had realized, almost with a small laugh, that she had not thought of her daughter all day. She was not alarmed by this. She did not panic. She felt instead a quiet gladness, as though some long-held tension had at last left her shoulders. 11 days later, her daughter telephoned. 11 days after the inner shift, my friends, 11 days. The conversation was warm. The reconciliation began that evening and was complete within the following month. And when Eleanor told me of the moment her daughter's voice came on the line, she did not describe shock. She did not describe amazement. She said only, "It felt as though she had been gone for a long weekend, Mr. Goddard." I was glad, but I was not surprised. That is again, the signature, the naturalness, the unsurprised welcome, the manifestation arriving as a friend rather than as a rescue. Now mark how the order ran. First Eleanor stopped checking, then the longing fell away. Then only then the manifestation appeared in the outer world. The order is the same in every case I have ever witnessed. The inner shift always precedes the outer event. Always. If you are still in the state of checking, the outer event has not yet been fully impressed. Stop the checking. Let the longing fall away. The outer event is then a matter of days. Now let me give you the practice plainly, so that you may begin tonight. There need be no elaborate preparation. You need only honesty with yourself and the willingness to lay down a habit that has been giving you, in truth, very little. Tonight before sleep, take a single piece of paper and write upon it a short list. Write upon it every form of checking you have engaged in this week regarding your wish. Be honest. Write down, "I have looked at my telephone perhaps 40 times a day. I have scanned the morning post. I have noted the time when I woke. I have read meaning into the license plates. I have refreshed a particular page on the internet. I have asked a friend casually whether they had heard any news." Write the list. Look at it. Then, my friends, lay the list aside and make a single private agreement with yourself. For the next 21 days, you will do none of these things. Not because they are wicked, not because they are forbidden by some teacher, because they are taxes upon your own manifestation, and you have decided, at last, to stop paying them. If the urge arises during the day, and it will arise, perhaps 100 times in the first week, you will notice the urge, you will smile gently at it, and you will turn your attention to whatever is in front of you. The bread on the counter, the friend at the table, the page of the book you are reading, the small task of the moment. And before sleep each night, do as you have always done. Go to sleep in the warmth of the wish fulfilled, but carry no expectation into the day. Watch for no signs, wait for no proof. Live, simply, as one who has already received and who is now occupied with other matters. Within a fortnight, perhaps within 3 weeks, you will notice almost without noticing that the urge to check has softened. By the end of the first month, it may have nearly vanished. And on the day it has fully vanished, my friends, the manifestation is no longer ahead of you in the distance. It is already on its way. The bridge of incidents is already arranging itself. You will receive what you have assumed without strain, without ceremony, in some small ordinary moment that resembles every other moment of your life, except that this one will carry, quietly, the news you stopped requiring. Now, my friends, let me lift this teaching to its highest level before we close. There is a great mystery here that the world does not see. The soul who searches the world for signs is, in truth, a soul who has not yet remembered the kingdom within. He is a soul who has placed his authority in the parking lot, in the clock, in the telephone, in the headlines. He has made the world his oracle. And the world, my friends, was never meant to be the oracle. The world was always meant to be the echo. The oracle is within. The oracle is the deep imagination, the I am, the indwelling Christ, which Blake called the human form divine. To consult the parking lot is to walk past the throne of one's own soul, to ask the dust outside the door whether the king is in. Stop, my friends, at the threshold of your own being. Do not walk past it. The throne is within. The king is within. What you have assumed is being arranged from within, by a power that requires no glance from you, no count, no scan, no refresh. Your work is not to verify the work of the law. Your work is to occupy, with quiet patience, the state of the one who has already received. The law's work is to bring the world into accord with that state. Do not attempt to do the law's work for it. It does not need your help. It needs only your peace. Remember the two souls in this great city. The first cast 300 glances into the world today and found nothing to satisfy him. The second cast none, and tomorrow her telephone will ring. The difference is not technique. The difference is the 300 glances withheld. Be the soul who withholds them. Be the soul who lives quietly in the state of having. The world is a mirror, my friends. Give it nothing to mirror but your peace, and watch what comes. Good evening, my friends. This is Neville Lectures. I shall see you again in the next.